it was so much more money than we expected. We didn't even know how to handle it, but it was very volatile. We were spending like 2 or 3 or 5K on ads from our own pocket every day. It's pretty big volumes. It's all relative, but for us, it was big volumes back in the days. And
welcome to the Creator's Adventure, where we interview creators from around the world, hearing their stories about growing a business. Today's guest shares how he grew his business using automation and how you can apply automations in your business without being technical. Hey everyone, I'm Brian McAnulty, the founder of Heights Platform. Let's get into it. Many have asked me what software I use to record such high quality video for this podcast. I use Riverside, and what's great about Riverside is it records the local camera feed from you and your guests around the world, which means crisp 4K video without having to worry about blurriness due to internet hiccups. Riverside is also a great editor, fitting with my philosophy of making it easy for yourself to create because there is nothing that your guests or you have to download. We also use Riverside's AI magic clips to find interesting moments for our episode intros. And I'm happy to announce that Riverside is sponsoring this episode. And if you sign up at creators.riverside.fm/creatorsadventure and use code creatorsadventure, you'll get 15% off. You can find the link in the episode description as well. Now back to the show. Hey everyone, we're here today with Yaron Been. He is an e-commerce entrepreneur, growth coach, and industrial engineer with a passion for helping businesses succeed. He founded EcomXFactor, where he and his team provide conversion rate optimization and e-commerce coaching services. With a track record of bootstrapping and scaling 7-figure e-commerce stores while traveling the world, Yaron has a wealth of experience to share with us today. Welcome to the show.
thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. My first question for you is, what would you say is the biggest thing either that you did or you are doing that helped you to achieve the freedom to do what you enjoy?
Oof, we started by philosophizing already. I love it. So, interesting question. So, I have a few principles that I've built throughout the years that I try to live by. I won't cover all of them, but I guess the most relevant at the moment is extreme ownership, which is just taking complete responsibility of your circumstances and understanding that you can adjust anything, and it's all about your perception of reality, and you need to change and adjust your moves and actions in order to achieve what you would like to achieve.
I like that. I think that's so important as well, because on one hand, it says, oh, well, taking extreme responsibility for everything, that sounds hard. But the reality is it gives you more control, because instead of saying making up some kind of excuse for, oh, I can't do this because, or this isn't going to work because, you get to control it and you take responsibility for it. And then you can be responsible for that outcome.
Exactly. And I saw someone broke down responsibility to like 2 words: responsibility. So the ability to respond. So I don't know if it's like the real origin of the word, because as you can see, I'm not originally an English speaker, but I just like the I don't know not the translation, but the fact that they broke it down to being able to respond.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you started your career in the Army as a Special Forces search and rescue operator. How did you transition from the Army into starting a business in e-commerce? And maybe what motivated you to become an entrepreneur?
Awesome. So I spent 4 years in the Army. Most of the people in Israel, they go to the Army. I spent 4 years because I was selected to the Special Forces. And once you go to the Special Forces, you need to spend more time because only the training is 18 months. And during this period, although I learned a lot about myself and I had interesting experiences for better or for worse, I realized that I don't want to have any commanders above me. And later on, I went ahead and I did a degree in industrial engineering. I started working in a media buying agency, and immediately I started feeling the same vibes that I felt back in the Army, that I need to report to my boss. And I didn't like that so much, to be honest. So luckily, I met a friend of mine for a cup of beer in Tel Aviv, and he showed me a screenshot of his Shopify store. And until that moment in time, I thought that dropshipping was just BS that gurus are selling in order to get rich from the course. But it was a childhood friend of mine, and he showed me like the revenue. And I said, okay, I got to try this. The morning after, my wife and I, we built a store. We had zero knowledge, but we built a store and we opened the ads. We spent like $5. We were like shaking because $5 back in the day, it seemed like a lot. And in the same evening, while we were at dinner with the family, we got our first sale. And this blew our minds because we realized, okay, we can make money online. So obviously we started investing more and more into this store while we were both working in 9-to-5s. And luckily, since I was spending in my day job, I was spending $1 million on a monthly basis on ads. I was stupid enough to start scaling also for my own money in my own store. And so because I spent recklessly, I also found success because, when you have a lot of data and you spend a lot of money, eventually you hit something. So we hit something. And after 2 years of working in a 9-to-5 and also having this business, we felt confident enough to quit our jobs. And we also left Israel and we took a flight to Thailand. And since then, we've been doing mainly e-commerce until approximately 2 years ago when we shut down our stores because it became kind of irrelevant. And I'm happy to elaborate about this as well, but I'll give you the opportunity to ask any questions.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's some great examples and things in there. For me as well, like being an entrepreneur, like that was the only way. And for me, I'm not so much worried about like, oh, am I going to struggle to make money or things like that. The thing I want to avoid is having to go and drive into work every day and work for somebody else. So I'd rather battle with it being difficult to make the money that I need at the time or something like this, or having to work a little bit more than having to face that possibility. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are the same. They realize they just don't want to work under somebody else. They want to create their own thing. And so doing that with the ads, though, you mentioned two things that I thought stood out. One is how you tried that $5 and you got a result from it. And I think for me, it's something I realize there's some creators who kind of just give up because they don't get that result. And if you can set yourself up in some way to get that first sale, even if it's $1 that you make earlier, then sometimes that's the difference of helping somebody continue. And it's partially luck, it's partially timing, but it's your skill as well. And you can put in something that kind of gives you better chances of getting any kind of initial result versus, I guess, the creators who put all this effort into something and then it doesn't really turn into much, and then they don't have that motivation to keep going anymore. And I remember I did an e-commerce store as well, started back in 2013. And the first month, I think I made like $1,300 to $1,500 in sales. And I spent like maybe $300 on ads, and I was blown away. I was like, this works. But if I didn't have that experience, if I didn't happen, it was actually from only a couple customers that they just bought a lot. And if I didn't have that experience early on and I got maybe one customer, but they barely bought anything, and then I lost money on the ads, I don't know if I would have had that same motivation to continue. And also with ads, they're a complicated topic. And you said that you managed to get all that data and then find out by spending your own money a way to make everything move forward. But there is also kind of connecting that the same way for so many people to go wrong and say like, oh, okay, got it. I'll spend more. That'll fix it. And then they just lose all their money. And so you already had some experience working in media buying. What would you say to somebody who is looking into investing in ads, how they can figure out the right way to do that? Because I know that I've been sometimes successful with ads, and other times I thought, I know what I'm doing. These numbers are going to work out. And then tens of thousands of dollars later, I realized, oh, probably shouldn't have done those things.
This is a great question. I will try to give a simple answer, although it's a very complex
The
situation.
whole training and course could just be that.
Yeah. I try to look at business and also in life as much as possible from a rational perspective. And I try to view anything in business as an equation. So when I start running ads, I want to have as many constants and knowns in the equations and as little variables and unknowns as possible in the equation. So when one gets started with ads, I think that his equation must be filled with some knowns. And what are these knowns? He must know at least that his sale process is nailed down, that he knows how to convert, that his landing page is doing well. So you must isolate as many variables as possible, so you'll know that if something is failing, it is because of the ad. And if the ad is failing, you want to go and analyze what exactly is failing. Is it the click-through rates or too low? Are the CPCs too high? Because then you can try to isolate and figure out what is wrong. So zooming out for a second, before a course creator should start spending money on ads, in my opinion, one should realize that you have mostly two resources in our life. Many more, but let's simplify them. So you have either time or money. So you must decide how you're going to allocate these resources. And based on my experience and my observation, the best thing to do at the beginning is to get sales organically. Invest time, get better at the skills before you need to start scaling and selling the courses at scale and doing the sales call at scale. So nail down the process. And only after you've nailed down the landing page and the sales call, and you know that these variables of the equation are being taken care of, you can go to the ads. So this is one vector of how I would approach ads. The other vector is get a job, or at least a freelancing gig as a media buyer. Just gain the experience with other people's money, and then go back to your business and spend your own money. So these are kind of like my two vectors for doing this.
Yeah, I like that. And I completely agree. I like to recommend for creators that they should usually go after getting their first $100,000 in sales before they start experimenting with ads. Because exactly as you said, if you try to do the ads in the beginning, especially with something like an online course, you don't know if the landing page is the issue, if the product itself is just like not described clearly, if the product itself is not providing the result people actually want to buy. And there's a whole mess of other things that might be the problem, not the ad. And you can't even tell. And it's really easy to get stuck then and be optimizing things, but then not know what you have to optimize. And then sooner or later you start running out of money. So
exactly,
I completely agree with that. It's better to know that, okay, I'm getting sales from this page. I'm getting sales at a rate that I'm happy with based on the traffic I have. So if I can get more traffic to this, that's the relevant audience, then I'll get this many more sales. And then you can work with the numbers a lot better. And then if it's not working, you realize, okay, it's something related to the ad, the creative, the audience, the cost. For the point about becoming a media buyer at another company, I like that too, because like I've realized myself, having not done that and having tried ads myself, a lot of people think, okay, well, I'm going to try this out. I've been learning about it. I did get the first steps down. Like I know I'm getting sales through here. And when you first start running ads, even if you have some experience in designing the creative or you know who your audience is, you're going to spend a good portion of money just testing and learning how the ad platform works, learning all of that. And so you shouldn't really expect anything in that initial period. And I think it's very easy to spend $1,000 on ads and then not really have anything come from it other than you learn a little bit. So I think that's very important to keep in mind.
For sure. And not to be too anal, but I just want to add a caveat, because everything in life is context dependent. I am by no means saying that money is more important than time. if you have the money, you should spend on ads faster than you're doing organically. But my response was under the observation that most of the course creators probably don't have a ton of money to spend on ads. So if you have money, go ahead, spend it on ads. It's better and it's faster. You will get the data faster. But since most of the people don't have a ton of money to play with the ads because they don't have VC funding, stuff like this, I think the organic route is safer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. And definitely, yeah, there's a lot of creative people I've seen have done ads specifically for getting feedback, even if it's not for the purpose of getting customers. But like such a long time ago when Tim Ferriss released like the 4-Hour Workweek, I think he said like he ran Google ads just to test titles. Like you couldn't buy the book yet. He just wanted to know what title would people click on. And so things like that, I've seen now people do things with like YouTube thumbnails and things like that, where they will run ads to figure out which thumbnail is actually going to perform the best. And then they take the best one and put that on their actual video when they launch it. And now they're starting from a point that it's going to convert better. And so ads are super powerful for that, for giving you that data.
Exactly. And furthermore, I know, like me and my wife, to be honest, we sold the course before we created the course, and only once we sold it, we started creating it. So this is also, it's kind of like drop shipping. You don't have the product yet, you sell it, and only once someone orders from you, you fulfill the order. So I think, and I know companies that are creating courses that have the same model. They publish something, they advertise something, and only after they get the sales, they go about and really build the course.
Yeah. Yeah. And I recommend that a lot as well. I think that's super powerful. And even if you have your heart set on it, and no matter what people say, you want to build something like this kind of course, you can still use that to get feedback and maybe at least shift your idea a little bit and realize, oh, people want to actually learn about this problem a little bit more, or this is the thing that they're more willing to pay for. And then, yeah, you can use that to your advantage and actually get some sales before you actually even have to create it.
I agree.
So, yeah, you mentioned about how you started that business and then decided to eventually quit your job and then start traveling. Can you share more about, like, I guess first the transition period of when you felt comfortable enough to say, okay, we're going to be just entrepreneurs now and you're going to leave the job, and then also about becoming a digital nomad maybe after that? Was that something like was always the plan or the dream, or was that kind of later on you decided that?
It was always the plan and the dream. After my wife and I, we finished our degrees, we took like a 4 months break and we flew to Southeast Asia. And she started reading the 4-Hour Workweek, which you just mentioned. And I guess there is no podcast today that is not even one episode that this book isn't mentioned. But anyway, she was reading the book, and we were walking on the beach in Thailand, and I said, okay, how are we going to get back to this place as fast as possible? We need to come up with a plan. So that was the goal. And regarding your question, so we were making more money on a daily basis from the drop shipping than both our salaries combined after 6 months already. It was so much more money than we expected. We didn't even know how to handle it, and we also did a lot of mistakes. But it was very volatile. So we were spending like 2 or 3 or 5K on ads from our own pocket every day. It's pretty big volumes. It's all relative, but for us it was big volumes back in the days. And sometimes the ad account was blocked. Sometimes we lost $1,000 on a daily basis. So it was very volatile. So we didn't have the confidence to leave. So I actually found another job. I started working in Fiverr in the headquarters as a media buyer. I was also spending a lot of money over there for them. But then after like 16 or 18 months, the dropshipping business seemed less volatile because we already were able to zoom out, and we saw that on a monthly basis, we were making good money, and we already couldn't stand our 9 to 5. So this is why we decided to quit. So at the beginning, it just felt too volatile. But when we zoomed out and we saw like a monthly breakdown, we felt that we were profitable enough. And then we decided to quit, and it seemed like natural that if we are not confined to a specific location, there is no reason to stay in Israel. Although as much as we love Israel, there are many other places that we can explore. So we kind of just left very fast after we both quit.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like how you mentioned that when you were on the beach with your wife in Thailand, that your thought was, okay, how can we get back to here? And I feel like I had a similar experience myself, that I read the 4-hour work week. I think I didn't even finish it all the way. And I was like, I can do that. That makes sense because my clients aren't even in the same state or town as me anyway. And I was doing a web design at the time. And I went on the first trip. I went to Italy for a month with some friends. And as soon as I was leaving there, that was exactly my thought. How can I get back here? How can I get back to this experience? And I think that is actually a great way for somebody to take a first step if they're interested in doing that. Take one trip. It doesn't have to be like a very short trip. It doesn't have to be a very long trip, but take one trip and then see how you feel. And I think the motivation that you get from that trip may be enough actually to make you turn that into a reality for yourself later on. Because for me, I know I went there, I felt, okay, how can I get back there? A couple months later, I went and traveled again. And then a month or two after that, I decided, okay, I'm just going to do this full-time digital nomad thing. I bought a one-way ticket and then was gone for like 13 months or so before I even came back to the US.
Nice. Yeah, and I think also Tim discusses this concept. I think he calls it mini retirement or something like this. I love your suggestion, but I think one must realize that the trip should be at least 3 weeks long, because if it's shorter than 3 weeks, you kind of feel as if it's
like
a
vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you shouldn't have the vacation mindset. You should have like the mindset of, I came to live here. I came to live in Rome. I came to live in Phuket. Because you need to chill and live your daily life. You go to the gym, you go to the cafes, you eat in restaurants. You're not sightseeing. You're just going to chill somewhere else. And you're probably going to fall in love with that feeling. And this will...
I think you're right. I think that's how it really impacts you too. Because once you've been there a few weeks and you realize, okay, I have to go back. Oh man. And that's what really helps. Yeah, I agree.
Awesome.
All right, so earlier, right before we hit record, you mentioned that you were really into automation. I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about maybe some different things that you're doing and some things we could share to help viewers and listeners kind of get inspired of what they could potentially do in their business, because I'm sure everybody's heard about like, oh, I can use automation tools and things like that to make my life easier. But I think now more than ever, that is possible thanks to AI. So to start, what's some of the things that you've been working on in relation to automation?
For sure. And this 100% relates to what we discussed before regarding organic or paid. So as I told you, my wife and I, we closed down our stores because there was a change in the algorithm, in the Facebook algorithm, that basically destroyed our profit margins. And we had to decide whether or not we want to rebrand and increase the prices in order to stay relevant, or we want to just pivot. And we decided to pivot. And then I realized, okay, I need to find a new business to build something new. And I can either go the ads route, spending a lot of money in order to find validation, or the organic route. So I decided I'll go the organic route because I didn't want to spend a lot of money, because I felt that the ads landscape was very expensive back in the days because of all the privacy issues and stuff like this. So I started doing organic efforts, but I felt I wasn't moving nowhere, because it just was like manual job, the exact stuff that you want to avoid when you quit your jobs. And it was very boring and tedious, and I didn't see any traction. So I realized I must scale this, and I decided to scale this using automation. This is what seemed to me the only way to scale organic, is using automations. So when I say automation, I make a distinction between what I call defensive automation and offensive automations. What I call defensive automations is stuff that people know probably, like Zapier or other API connectors. This is stuff like sending the email that you got directly to your accountant or saving the invoice directly into your drive. These are all stuff that you can outsource them to a VA, but you don't want to because it's so repetitive and you don't need any logic. So you might as well automate this. But this doesn't generate revenue. It's only streamlined.
It can save you time, but it's not going to bring new business.
Exactly. It's streamlining the logistics of the business. So this is defensive automations. And I have what I call offensive automations, which some people call this revenue operations, in which you actually do stuff that scales your organic efforts in order to generate revenue. So for example, I wanted to hop on more podcasts using Matchmaker. This is a platform, a directory of many podcasters, and you can reach out manually to each one of them. You can also send like a personalized outreach and pitch yourself. But I didn't want to pitch myself one by one. I would have gone nuts. So what I did, I scraped 1,000 pages from the Matchmaker directory. I poured all of them into an Excel. Then I used Power Automate Desktop, which is a tool for automations, to take each content from each page regarding the show and push it to ChatGPT. ChatGPT wrote a personalized outreach icebreaker for me, and then it automatically went to the page and pitched me as a guest in all the shows. So instead of doing this one by one, which probably would have taken me ages, I built this automation within 2 hours, and it took 1 hour to pitch 1,000 podcasts. So wow. This is how I view offensive automations. And I have many automations like this, which I've built. So
I'm curious for that one. Did you do that to us, or did my team find you? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Are you on Matchmaker?
I think that we are on it.
Yeah, so maybe.
I know that we haven't really used it. But like if it was just a message through there, I don't think we would have seen it even maybe. So it would have had to go to our email. But maybe Matchmaker sends it to the email.
We don't send it to email, but I think you get notifications from Matchmaker on your email. Maybe, I don't know. But this was like a year ago already.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is one example. LinkedIn automations, Facebook, everything can be automated basically. And I hate doing stuff manually, so I try to automate anything. So I have many use cases that I can share with you, but this is it in a nutshell, creating automations that really are impactful and can generate revenue, not only streamline the logistics.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to talk more about like ways to involve AI in that, because I think that's the part that a lot of people don't realize. Like ChatGPT is not just to answer questions, but when you use the API and connect it with all these other tools, you can have it automate these things for you. And so my favorite way to kind of dissect and think about how to even start that process is when you have a process yourself of like, so you mentioned the podcast outreach, that you come up with an icebreaker and all of that, like you could do all of that manually. But if you can, in the most non-technical way to describe this, if you can write out that process and step by step, like I'm going to construct this icebreaker, this is how I'm going to construct the icebreaker, this is how long it's going to be, and you describe that to the AI, then it can do the thinking of that for you and come up with something pretty similar even to what you would come up with yourself, maybe even better, and then automate that process. And you can do it like instantly or times 1,000 versus even outsourcing it to a VA or a teammate, because then they have to think about it and do all that work.
For sure. Also, Tim Ferriss, we are going to reference to him again. So he discusses in this book. So you either automate or delegate or eliminate. So first you need to try to automate the thing, then delegate. And if you can do both of them, you should try to eliminate it, assuming that it is not important enough. But one thing that comes to mind when I totally agree with what you said, but you mentioned a few words that I think that people just get afraid when they hear them, like API or stuff like this. And what I would encourage people to do is, and this is what I try to do whenever I install a new software, I go and watch the tutorials of at least 1 to 2 hours long to see all the capabilities of the software, because I want to make sure that I'm aware of all the features and I don't have any fears regarding using the software. And what I would encourage people to do is go to YouTube, Free Code Camp. It's a great YouTube channel about coding, and just look for a course about APIs. Once you do this course, I don't know, it will be 1 hour long, 3 hours long, you will realize this isn't rocket science. But some people are just so afraid from coding because it sounds so terrifying, because once you don't know what you don't know, you're afraid. But to be honest, it's not that complicated. Okay, there are levels of complexity, but for getting stuff done and improving your daily lives and streamlining stuff, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You just need not to be afraid of stuff. So I would encourage people just to look up, like, what is the API, coding 101, stuff like this, just to make sure that you're not afraid of this jargon, because this jargon is here to stay.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I am mostly a designer, but enough of a developer myself that I know how to build with the APIs, and that's all more natural to me. But at the same time, really, you're right that all you have to know is the basics of how it works. And instead of thinking of this as, oh, I heard the word API, that means developers deal with it. I'm not going to learn about that one. Just learn the basics of what it is, because even with ChatGPT, like, I've been getting into building these custom GPTs by connecting APIs. And this is something a lot of people aren't really taking advantage of yet, where you can build GPTs that don't just have a custom prompt, but you can actually connect it to an app that you use, like your task management software or something else. And so I've built one that connects to our email inbox, connects to our task management tools, connects to Heights platform. And now you can mention them in a conversation that they all talk with each other. And the way I did that, while I could develop and connect the API integrations inside ChatGPT, you actually don't have to. All you have to do is, when you go to the builder, they have this Actions GPT, which is their own GPT that helps write the API connection for you. And all you have to be able to know how to do is find the API documentation of the software that you want to connect. So let's say, like, we use ClickUp for our productivity, like task management. So search like ClickUp API in Google, you find the page, and you don't have to even fully understand it. All you have to know is the parts that you need. So if you want ChatGPT to be able to create a task inside your ClickUp, then you find the API documentation where it says create task. You just copy all of that text, or even the link sometimes to the page. You send that to the Actions GPT, and then it writes it all out. And you copy that, you paste it into the custom GPT, and then it pretty much works. If it doesn't work, if it gives you an error, ask ChatGPT why there's an error. But that's really the basics of what you have to understand. And like you said, I think, like, somebody can figure that out in a couple hours and be ready to go. And once you've done it once, then you'll have a lot more confidence to say, okay, I can do this again with another app that I want to connect.
For sure, exactly. It's mostly about not being afraid of this and not blocking the new knowledge. And once you have the courage to get started, you will never look back, and you will I'm assuming that you will thank yourself, because you're going to save so much time and be so much far ahead from all the other people who are going to still be afraid of doing stuff.
Yeah. And it comes back to the responsibility that you mentioned in the beginning, that instead of making an excuse and saying, oh, API means developer, that's not for me, then take the responsibility and say, you know what, I'm going to learn about this for an hour or two, and I'm going to make it work for myself. And you'll thank yourself after that. All right. Well, I've got one more question for you, and that is, on the show, I like to have every guest ask a question to the audience. So if you could ask our audience anything, whether it's something you're curious about, something you want to get people thinking about, what would that be?
This is a great question. Let's tie it down to the two topics that we discussed the most about today, which is responsibility and Tim Ferriss. So there is one question that Tim Ferriss often asks, and I really like. I'm paraphrasing, but it's not as if I've solved this. I'm also asking this myself, but I think it's a powerful question. What are you currently doing on a daily basis that doesn't align with your long-term goals? I think it's such a powerful question. I do a lot of shit that don't align with my long-term goals, but I try to minimize this. So I'm encouraging the listeners to ask themselves this question and try to minimize the stuff that they are doing on a daily basis that doesn't align with their goals.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I also think even when you're consciously focused on that, like new things pop up over time that creep into your workflow and what you have to do. And I've definitely thought to myself in the past, oh, well, this is not really like the thing I want to have to do, but I guess it doesn't take that long. But when you realize like you have to do it every single day or like how much that eats into potential focus on other tasks, then yeah, it is really important to think about that.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, Yaron, before we get going, where else can people find you online?
I'm mostly active on LinkedIn and on YouTube. They can look me up, EcomXFactor or Yaron Been. And my name is pretty unique, so no competitors in the Google search engine results page. So yeah, LinkedIn or Google or YouTube.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks.